Gray Monkey and the Ground Beetle. The sky was clear above the high canopy of the ceiba trees, and down below, by the side of the river, was the gray monkey. A lone beetle scurried across the river rock, its shell the dull black of the mature ground beetle. The gray monkey heard the tender footfalls as the ground beetle approached. "Gray monkey, I have a question I was hoping you could help me with. I look like all the other ground beetles. We even do all the same things. But what is my purpose?" The gray monkey dipped its hand in the river. They lifted it above their head, and a single drop of water fell into its mouth. "What is the purpose of the rain?" asked the gray monkey. "The rain fills the river and brings the jungle to life," answered the ground beetle. "That's what the rain does for us. But from its beginning in the cloud to its impact on a treetop, a single drop of water is not aware of the river or the jungle. It is only aware of itself, falling. This single drop has no purpose on its own. It is only aware, I am water, I am falling. When it's in the river, it's aware, I am water, I am flowing. Once the single drop enters into our awareness, we provide it with a purpose," spoke the gray monkey. The antenna above the beetle's giant eyes perked in attention. "So you do know my purpose." The gray monkey dried his hand on his dense hair the color of stone and placed it down in front of the ground beetle. "Let me walk you home." "But you haven't answered my question," urged the ground beetle. "I didn't?" "No. Each morning I wake up knowing the day will be the same as the last. I'm getting older, gray monkey. I've been waiting for something different to happen all my life. I need to know my purpose. What am I supposed to be doing with my life?" "And the other ground beetles?" asked the gray monkey. "Do they think the same?" "No, they're too busy to care." "You look hungry, ground beetle. I know a fig tree that should be ripe by now." The ground beetle climbed into the gray monkey's paw, and they took off swinging through the trees. The ground beetle recognized the call of the birds, but they had never been so near. Their voices had always fallen down on him from the high nests. The gray monkey came upon a squat fig tree. Its dead fruit had fallen around the trunk. The gray monkey laid his hand on the jungle floor, offering the gray beetle a safe exit. "This fig tree should fill you up." The gray monkey offered a smile. The ground beetle crawled to a split fig, wondering why their conversation had ended so abruptly. He turned to ask the gray monkey, but it was gone. The scent of the split mushy figs had reached the ground beetles hidden under decaying leaves, those burrowed in trees. The lone ground beetle was happy to see his friends and family at his side. A fire ant was spotted amongst the fruit, and they all scattered. There was never just one fire ant. The ground beetle led his fellow ground beetles to a grove of rubber trees downed in the last storm. "Here," the beetle thought, "we'll find a safe place to rest." The ground beetle found a large trunk turned on its side and climbed up the smooth bark, still warm from the afternoon sun. The beetle reached the top of the trunk and turned to guide his colony along, but they had stopped following. He peered down. Underneath the massive trunk was the body of a boar. His colony had smelled the corpse and followed the smell. The same storm that toppled the rubber trees took the life of the boar. The ground beetle climbed down from the trunk and joined the scavenging party. The ground beetle tore at the dead skin between the prickly hairs of the boar. Others fed on the marrow of the broken rib cage. More crawled over the body in search of a way in. The sun fell and the moon hung over the jungle. The ground beetles had emptied the bones and burrowed deep beneath the boar's thick hide. A coati snuck out from the tall grass to the carcass and took the snout of the boar in its jaws. The ground beetle released his bite and disappeared into the shadow of grass. The others followed, hoping to avoid becoming a snack for the coati. In the morning, the ground beetle woke with the same thought as always. So he decided to give the gray monkey another chance with his seemingly unanswerable question. The ground beetle found the gray monkey back by the side of the river. "I have the same question, gray monkey. What is my purpose? Tell me about yesterday, the first bite of the fallen figs." "Will this answer my question?" asked the ground beetle. "Eventually," answered the gray monkey. "Well, a mushy fig is a favorite joy of mine. Wet bark can't even compare," the ground beetle answered. "Let's walk." The gray monkey placed his paw down next to the ground beetle. The ground beetle climbed into the paw of the gray monkey, and the two went walking through the forest, past the vines and the draping fronds of the fern trees. "Once you ate all the figs you could, what remained of that joy?" asked the gray monkey. "Easy," answered the ground beetle. "The food was gone, the joy was gone." "What is a joy that does not disappear?" "I don't know. Will that tell me my purpose?" groaned the ground beetle. The ground beetle waited for an answer, but the gray monkey gave none. They walked on, and under the shadow of the canopy, they reached a patch of fresh growth, budding hibiscus. The gray monkey sat, the ground beetle in its cupped paw. They watched as tiny green caterpillars pulsed up the short stalks, eating as they go. "Why is it that when I ask you a question, you take me to food? Do I?" The lone beetle scurried to the parade of caterpillars and picked them off one by one. The gray monkey climbed above the hibiscus and nestled into a plantain tree. Soon the jungle floor swarmed with ground beetles. The gray monkey searched the swarm for his lone ground beetle. He offered his friend a hand. "Come with me. There are some plantains up here that are juicier than any plump caterpillar." The ground beetle climbed into the monkey's giant paw and was lifted higher than he had ever been. The fruit at the top of the tree was the ripest, eaten by the birds and monkeys that could easily reach them. The gray monkey bit a plantain in half, setting an unpeeled end in front of the ground beetle. The ground beetle used its forearms to get the pulp to his mandibles. The gray monkey was right. He would give up caterpillars and figs for the pulp of a ripe plantain. From the top of the plantain tree, the ground beetle could see more than he had ever seen before. He could see the bend in the river, the far-off trees trampled by a family of elephants. There were mountains he did not know existed. Below him was the budding hibiscus, the stalks eaten before they could fully bloom. The ground beetles gorged on the caterpillars, and the flowers remained untouched. They were saving the hibiscus. He thought of the boar. Together, they cleaned the bones and ate the dead meat. The ground beetle paused. He felt a sudden pride in something that required no work of him. His antenna perked and he looked up at the gray monkey. "I clean the jungle." "And you do a wonderful job, ground beetle." "I thought my purpose would be grand, a destiny larger than me." "You sound disappointed, ground beetle." "No, just surprised." The ground beetle climbed into the paw of the gray monkey. "Take me back, please. I belong down there." The gray monkey swung down to the forest floor, returning the lone ground beetle to its community amongst the crushed hibiscus. The ground beetle began to scurry off, but had one final question. "You never told me. What is a joy that doesn't disappear?" The gray monkey offered a smile. "To follow one's purpose." The ground beetle watched as the gray monkey took to the trees, disappearing into the pure white sun of the upper canopy, with the taste of sweet plantain still in its mouth. The ground beetle took a caterpillar between its jaws, and something struck against its shell, and then again, and again, and again. It had begun to rain.